This survey was done by PwC, and it said that 65% of the workforce is currently looking for a new job. And that number goes up if the company announces that they're going to make them come back into the office full time.
Hello, and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. And we believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. We want to have conversations and hear stories about how real people and real businesses operate. And I'm your host, Jeff Ma, and I'm joined again today by my co-host, Chris Petrie. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hello.
How's your week going, man?
So far, so good. Busy is always good, you know?
Agreed. Our guest today is Casey Hasten. Casey is an executive recruiter, executive coach, and a hiring guru. She's currently working as a director of recruiting at VIP, and she also hosts the We Are VIP podcast. And we're excited to have Casey here with us today to help us connect the dots between the recruiting process, recruiting, HR, all that, and of course, love. Welcome to the show, Casey. How are you?
I am fantastic, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here with you guys.
Likewise.
You know, we always start with random icebreaker questions. I had trouble picking this one today, so I hope you all can appreciate it. Chris, you can go first. What's your best tip for avoiding distractions when working from home?
Embrace them. I think I've talked to people about this before, but I think that in this new reality of work, hybrid work, but also the reality that you can't really compartmentalize life and work anymore, I think that distractions are going to happen. And for me, we spend so much energy and mental focus trying to keep the distractions away instead of just allowing those distractions, right? So if your kids interrupt you to say hi or ask you for a snack, just go ahead and get, they're going to keep interrupting, right? But also if you are distracted, maybe that's a warning or a sign that you need a break, that you need to actually get up and go and take care of something or do something, right? Get out of the house, whatever. So my tip is to embrace those distractions and don't keep trying to fight them off, because you waste more energy trying to avoid distractions that are inevitable.
Nice. Casey, are you working from home?
I'm working on a hybrid schedule right now. So I do 2 days at home and 3 days in the office. And I have probably the biggest distraction. I'm an empty nester, so I don't have to worry about kids, but I have 2 little fur babies that are very, very loud and think that they have to protect me from the blowing leaves, the squirrels, everything. And so they tell me about it quite a lot. And so one of the things that I've done to really kind of minimize distractions is I use focus music. So binaural beats and I like the binaural beats with the bass tones. And I can put in my earbuds if I'm not having to be on the phone. And I don't know what it is about that music, but it just I just zero in on what I'm doing, and they can go bark all day.
I thought you were putting on some special music for the dogs. I was like, oh,
I do that too. There is a channel that is called Calming Anxiety Music for Dogs.
Oh my.
For real.
That's awesome. Chris, you can try that for Kirby sometime.
Yeah. I have a fur nephew that you can sometimes hear in the background, but he is usually downstairs and I'm upstairs, but his barks, for whatever, he's, less than 10 pounds, but his bark carries like he's, 100 pounds.
Same.
So you're just like, what's going on? And again, it's around the mailman, Amazon delivery, right?
UPS. They hate UPS.
Yeah, UPS, a neighbor, right? Like, oh my gosh, the wind moved, right? Like
exactly.
Any little thing just sets them off.
All right, let's jump in. Casey, I always want to start here, but I want to hear a little bit, and we're here to talk about kind of like, you have so much experience, so much expertise in recruiting. Can you just lightly draw us the path that got you there? Like where do your passions lie in recruiting, and how did you get here?
So not my first career. I definitely made a career pivot, and I so wish that I had been an assessment junkie when I was younger, because I would have known never to have gone into my first career, which was accounting. And yeah, I know, can you see me as an accountant? I mean, come on. But I did it for a long time. I stuck it out because I was like, this is the path I've chosen, right? And so I did that for about 20 years. And then I was looking for a job. I'd been with the company for 13 years that ended up closing. And I was looking for an accounting job, and I ended up going to recruiters. First time I'd ever had to go to recruiters. Every other time I'd always been handpicked for my next role, right? And I'm going to these recruiters. And let me tell you something. I'm in the DFW area. I think I found every bad recruiter first before I found one good one. And there's a big difference between, a good recruiter and a bad recruiter. And we can talk a little bit about that in a moment. But when I finally found a good recruiter, one that listened, one that used love as a business strategy, she really talked to me. I mean, we talked for about an hour and a half, where most recruiters would meet with you for like 15 minutes. How are they going to learn what it is that's going to make your life whole in your next job in 15 minutes, right?
Mm.
So at the end of the conversation, she looked at me and she goes, you don't even like accounting, Casey. And I went, oh, what am I going to do? And she goes, come recruit with me. And I went and shadowed her for a day. And by the end of the day, I was just like, just give me the phone. You don't even have to pay me. This is my calling. And that's when my passion was ignited. That's when I really stepped into that zone where I never really work a day in my life because I love what I do so much. And that's helping people. So I'm a third party recruiter. I'm not an internal recruiter, which means I work with hundreds of different companies at one time. They'll come to me to go find the good talent. And so I get to have an impact all across the US. And it's so amazing.
Awesome. That's really interesting, inspiring, insightful, all of the above. And I'm going to that transition, that pivot, that, realization, that aha, which is scary, but also freeing at the same time, I'm sure. Can you walk us through like what got you to realize that recruiting really was it? Like, I mean, you were on that shadow, but I'm sure there had to be something else that you saw or witnessed, or, a high that you felt, after one interaction. I'm curious to know what that was for you.
So in the world of accounting, you're alone a lot. There's a lot of solitude, right? You sit behind your desk, behind your spreadsheets, you're ticking your tie in, and you're really having to be in the moment when you're doing all that, and you're not talking to other people. You're not engaging a lot unless you have to go get a number, and then it's right back to your desk, right back to that spreadsheet, right? And I think what really helped me when I was doing the shadowing, because I'm listening to, I've got another headset on, so I'm listening to every conversation that she's having, and I'm listening to the impact that she's getting to have with these people and the interaction that she's getting to have with those people. And I was like, I'm an extrovert through and through. I'm an extrovert. I don't put me in a small office and close the door. I need people. And I think that's really the first thing. I didn't know I was going to love recruiting as much as I do. But just having that people interaction is really that moment where I was like, this is what I need to be doing.
Got it. Awesome.
That makes sense. And I guess, when we bring guests on the show, we don't, it's not like you go through this questionnaire where it's like, do you apply love as a business strategy and everything you do? Like, we don't, we don't like, so I'm always curious to know, like, what is your take on, where love specifically in your life or in your work or in your day to day, where does that show up? Where does that apply?
Oh, it shows up in every touch that I have with people, because we don't want them to, we want them to find, like I said, find that next role that's really going to get them excited and say, thank God it's Monday. Right. And so there's been times when I have talked to people, and once I hear what it is they're looking for, and they've gone to interview for a job, and I start having those conversations with them, and I hear those red flags and that hesitancy, and I will pull them from the process. And I don't do it because I don't want them to get that job. I do it because I don't want them to get a job they're going to hate. And I tell all my candidates that too. I'm like, I don't want you to hate me at the end of this process. I want you to call me your best friend and invite me to your baby showers.
How invested are you in the company's culture that you're bringing people into, right? Like, so like, obviously we're always talking about that corporate culture, that company culture, and you're here placing people into these environments. How involved are you? How hands-on are you in that?
So as far as creating the culture, I'm not that hands-on, pardon me. But as far as exploring their culture to make sure that it is going to be a good fit for my candidates, I am all over that. And I can give you a couple of examples. One of my companies that I'm working with right now, I've worked with for about 8 years. And when I first started working with them, they were in startup mode. They were doing, going through an IPO, going public, and then they also merged with their number two competitor that same year that they IPO'd. So it was horrible there. They were grinding their people to death. But here's what I did. I worked with them, but it was with the full disclosure that I was going to tell every single candidate how horrible it was going to be if they decided to go work there. And they were like, that's okay, because we need them to know coming in. So they appreciated that. Well, fast forward, they ended up hiring an internal recruiting team. And so for about 2 years, I wasn't working with them. Last year, they came back to me and I'm like, I'm not going to place people there if the culture is still the same, because I mean, there's been an awakening throughout this pandemic. People don't want to work in that. They know they don't have to work in that environment anymore. So if that's the environment that you have going on right now, I'm not your girl. And the senior VP took an hour to explain to me all the initiatives they had put into place to create a culture of diversity, of inclusion, of a place where people really want to come to work and where they have a clear path where they can grow. However they want that to be, that's up to them. The company's not dictating that. And so it's really been refreshing to re-engage with them on a different level and be able to say, hey, I'm excited about this company now, instead of, you don't really want to work here. Yeah. But the other one example that I was going to give you is a company that I also used to work with a long time ago, and I ended up firing them. Well, they came back, and that's when I was with a different recruiting agency. They came back to this agency and re-engaged with another one of my recruiters. And I'm like, I'm not sending any candidates there. I know what that place is like. And, I would not like you if you put me there. Yeah. So I'm not going to put you somewhere I don't want to be. And so he's like, do you have any candidates for this? And I'm like, no, I'm not sending you any. Yep. So yes, I do get involved in the culture.
That's awesome. And so just a little bit, like, I think we talked about this in the past, but I used to work, through by way of acquisition for a large, I guess, international recruiting firm. And so I got exposed to a lot of the recruiting conversation, and even Softway has worked, as a partner with a number of recruiting firms. And one of the things that we're seeing is that candidates are now willing to decline positions for great companies or large companies or Fortune 100 companies because of the culture. Mm-hmm. And recruiters are having to give that feedback now to clients, whereas in the past, it typically wasn't a point of conversation or, I guess, a comfortable conversation in the past, where recruiters would have to tell a client who had maybe a high paying position or, had a name, or a brand name that people typically respected, that the candidate declined you even though you wanted them. I'm curious to know if you've had to have those kinds of conversations, or it sounds like you are in a situation where having those conversations has led to you having to fire clients.
Yeah. And I really try to have those conversations on the front end, not on the back end, because I don't want to waste anybody's time. So, but there are times like, and I am encouraging companies, you got to move quickly in this market right now, because candidates have about a 48 to 72 hour shelf life right now before they get multiple offers. We literally just had a candidate call us. She had an interview at 1 and she canceled at 12, an hour before her interview, simply because she got an offer that she couldn't refuse. I mean, they're flying off the shelf. But, and I'm sorry, where were we going with that?
The feedback around culture to employers and how you front load that versus, waste people's time at the end.
Yes. So I really try to, so I'm out there visiting the company. I'm talking to multiple people, but see, here's the other thing. I also know where people are looking the most. So if I'm getting a lot of resumes from your company, I want to know why before I engage with you. If you're having a mass exodus, there's a problem.
I feel like this is like my own personal, maybe even like stigma, if you will. But like when I think of recruiters, I often think of them like, I think of them in the terms of like old fashioned terms of like salespeople, where it's like you have to meet quotas. Yep. Like your objective is to, it's a business. So you're obviously there to, yes, connect people to jobs, but essentially, for profit, and make sure that you get people in the highest paying possible job, things like that. And again, that's just from this is literally from my perspective of not being in that world at all. But that's something that's really interesting to me, because the way you're talking about it, Casey, is like it's very human. It makes perfect sense. It makes sense to put people where they'll be happy and things like that. But it leads me to like kind of ask the question of like, where do you sense it harder? Where does it get hard, I guess, to be human? Because we all have those elements. Like, the reason Love as a Business Strategy is needed is because business is often driven by those numbers, by those bottom lines, by those shareholders. And so at times people find themselves at odds with doing, let's say, the right thing or the best thing because of that need. Do you have those types of experiences and situations?
So I'm going to have to say no. And you're right. A lot of the bigger agencies, they have built those empires off the backs of the people that work there by just browbeating them, giving them those quotas. I've been in a place where you're making 300 outbound calls a week. You're having 10 interviews. You've got to have 10 send outs. I mean, this, and this, and it's so very stressful, right? But here, and I think this is a switch with it internally, is, I have my own internal rules, and my number one internal rule is to give value first. It doesn't matter if I'm not making the company happy, if I'm not making money like I need to, if I'm not giving value first to the community that I serve, then I'm not living up to my own standards. So that comes first. And I believe if you do that and you do it genuinely, that money will follow. And it's not failed me yet.
I love that, standard. And having been around so many recruiters, as you mentioned, there's good ones and there's bad ones. And I still want us to go deeper into good and bad recruiters. But I know that oftentimes is not true for people who are trying to place roles. And like you mentioned, have those hard quotas set, and they just need to meet those quotas. But I'm curious to know, like, in the age of the Great Resignation, what is a good recruiter? What is a bad recruiter? And what are some of the numbers that you're even seeing, around that?
So the numbers around good versus bad.
Numbers around the Great Resignation and how that's changing things, like from data perspective, but then how that plays into being a good or a bad recruiter.
And I think that the Great Resignation, I mean, we are all desperate for candidates right now because of that. That labor shortage is absolutely real. The standards and the criteria have changed for what we would call them a placeable candidate. And that's another thing. There are certain profiles that companies will pay a fee to an external recruiter for, and there are certain profiles that they won't. Those are lessening a little bit more now that we are in such great need. I can tell you we're working on over 160 different roles right now throughout, with all different companies. But those numbers are real. And I think that a good recruiter, even though we're feeling that pressure of not having enough candidates, will still continue to nurture those relationships with the candidates that they do have. For example, one of the things that I like to do with especially my new grads, the ones that are just starting out in their career, the ones that I know that I can have the greatest impact on, is if I place, even like say 0 to 2 years, okay? If I place them in a role, they're getting a gift bag from me full of books that I think they need to read to set their career on the right path. And so I think that's an extra touch. I don't know of very many recruiters that would do that. And that's out of my pocket. That I don't have an expense account for that. But I feel so strongly about the success of the people that I work with that I want to give them that little extra oomph. So I think there are a lot more, I don't want to call them dirty recruiters, but more, I don't know what else to call them really. There are those recruiters that they don't care about the candidate. All they care about is their pocketbook, right? All they care about is you walk in, you, Mr. Candidate, all they see is a dollar sign on your head. And those are the kind of recruiters you want to stay away from, because they're going to tell you anything they can to get you to do what they want. And another example of that is, I don't know if you've heard this before or not, Chris, but close on the first offer. Yeah. Well, why are we closing on the first offer if that's not what the candidate wants? Mm-hmm. What if they want to explore some other opportunities? Those are little games that can get played in the recruiting world that I think are just awful. I think they're tacky because you're not putting your candidates' needs and wants. And, this is going to affect your paycheck for one check. Mm-hmm. This could affect this person for years. Yeah. So you need to be conscious of that. And remember, they are a person, not a product.
Yes. And also, I think that, while we're talking a lot about the candidate, the client's also suffering that too, because, if it's not a good, match, but on paper, it looks like a great match. And in that one conversation you had that you rushed through, it was a great match. And then you actually put them there, like, is that client going to come back to you for the next role? Right.
Exactly.
And I
It's all
think
about relationships.
yeah. So I completely agree. And I think that when it comes to this conversation, we do have listeners and viewers, if they're watching the video, who are in those either internal recruiting roles, or who are sort of hiring managers that are looking for great talent. I'm curious to know what you would advise them to be looking at, thinking about, or doing differently even than maybe what they would have done or been doing in the past, before the Great Resignation, before this hybrid approach to work, before the sort of candidate expectations and preferences changing so drastically.
Yeah.
If you've seen some things.
I absolutely have seen some things, and I think you guys are going to appreciate this because, again, going back to that reflective period that everybody's had where they've learned, I don't have to put up with that anymore. Companies are really going to have to change their ways. They don't get to bulldog people into doing what they want. They need to think about what their people want. Okay. And that needs to start in the interview process. Remember, I mean, you're not the only one, the hiring manager's not the only one doing the interviewing. The candidates are now interviewing the hiring managers just as much. So it's so important that you are able to show them, give them really good, solid examples of what your culture looks like, not just the words on the wall. It needs to be evident, give examples. Don't just say, oh yeah, we have a good company culture. How? Tell me how.
Yeah. Often I would say that the interview experience should be a demonstration of your culture, right? And to me, that's, when I've been in interviews and when I, instruct the teams, is like how we structure this interview, the process, the communication, everything is a reflection of our culture and what we are standing for and what they should expect, within our walls, right? Because it's the small things, it's the interactions, it's how they're greeted when they walk through the door. It's, what happens when they sit down, who are we waiting for, who speaks first, right? All of that, sort of is encapsulated in that culture. And so many teams refuse to really sort of delve into that interview process, into that hiring process to see if there's opportunities to really reflect the culture that they have inside of that, and not just do it because, oh, this is the way we've always done it, or we're supposed to be very professional and super uptight, and we're supposed to have a good cop and a bad cop. We're supposed to interrupt them, throughout the like those old ways of getting talent in are still being upheld, and you're like, ooh.
And I think we're seeing a lot more of the team interviews where you get to interview more of them. And I've had it go really well and I've had it go really wrong, and I can give you an example of that. We had a candidate that was interviewing with a company and he'd gone through multiple interviews with the hiring manager and then the hiring manager directly below that person. And they were wanted him to come back and meet with the team. He is on board. It's 10 out of 10. He is loving this company. Meets with the team. There was one person on the team that was completely toxic. He said, nope, no, thank you.
Yep.
But that's important that you find that out ahead of time.
Yep. Oh, and I mean, speaking of this, is like, to me, a lot of the takeaways are like, please be judicious about your hiring panel as an employer. Like, please. So many, like, as to your point about candidates being also interviewers, looking at who they're going to be working with, who they want to learn from, who they don't want to be around. All of those things are being assessed. Who you put in front of them matters. Right. And do they see themselves in certain, places in the organization, right? We talk about D&I, right? Like, hiding people, right, is never a good thing, but also it could make a world of difference to that candidate if they don't see, someone who either looks like them or reminds them or is inspiring in a certain way that isn't about just hard skills. Sometimes that is a missed opportunity that I've seen so many organizations just completely dismiss, don't think about, for whatever reason, right? It's not always intentional. I don't want to paint that picture. But it's just, I don't know if you have any of those other sort of ahas or, hidden gems where it's like, just think about this and it can actually create a world of difference for a candidate.
Well, and I think not just for a candidate, but just for a culture in general. So, and I was just thinking about this as you were talking. If there is that one person that you might not want on your panel with that potential new employee, maybe ask yourself why. Because maybe that person doesn't belong here. So
Yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
like, yeah, no, I think that those, because to me, if you actually go down that path, you actually start to really think differently about like, wait,
mhm,
why would I not want someone on the current team to be in front of a new hire? And if they are that problematic, like what other issues are they having?
mhm,
What other places should they not be showing up? Right? Because it's
exactly.
right. Oof.
Yeah, we're kind of dealing with that firsthand. So the only other thing that I would like to leave you guys with is
Mm,
I just ran across a report, and this is more towards the hiring companies, that you're not in charge anymore. Okay, I'm sorry, but you're not. This is
yeah.
a candidates market. This survey was done by PwC, and it said that 65% of the workforce is currently looking for a new job, and that number goes
Mhm.
up if the company announces that they're going to make them come back into the office full time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people have proven they don't have to be in the office to get the work done, and but they do want some in office because they need that interaction. But
Mhm.
work with your people, ask them what they want. Don't tell
Yes.
them what they're going to do, because
Mhm.
that's just not going to work anymore. And on top of that, just to kind of prove a point that I do absolutely believe this survey is true, is that right before I came on here, I was doing a search for one of my clients. And the first thing I always do is I put in years of experience. And then I want to make sure that they've been at the company that they were with for at least 1 year. So I do years of experience. I get 4.7 thousand hits. Too many, of course, but I haven't done all my other keywords. But I do the next one and I say, I want them to at least been in their current role for at least a year. That number dropped to 1.6 thousand.
Wow.
Wow.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a testament to the times.
Hmm.
Yeah. People are looking. And I think your message around like really as a hiring manager, as leaders of a business, as, potential sort of leaders of a business, like it's no longer your game. Right.
Mm-mm.
Like, and it's for so long it's been that way. But changing that and, putting out decrees and demands and,
Yep.
expecting people to do what you want just because you have a title is no longer going to be effective.
Mm-mm.
And, as we have the most diverse, sort of across generations in the workplace, like we have so many generations in the workplace at one time, like it's only going to create, further issues if command and control and hierarchy are the ways that we've operated in the past. And it's impacting the ability to bring in candidates for an interview, let alone offer them something and then see those offers be accepted. So it's just
And that they actually start on their first day. That's another thing we're seeing. They
yeah.
keep shopping those offers.
Yeah.
Wow.
All
So
right.
it's tough.
Last quick fire question for you. What is the most important question a candidate can ask in their interview to the company?
Um, Actually, I want to turn that around, because I have a little technique that I teach my candidates. And so it's the most important answer that they can give.
Mm.
And and it's really around that icebreaker question. Tell me a little bit about yourself, right? And the reason that I think this is such an important question is because people are going to form, and I can't remember how quickly it is, but they form their first impression of you, whether they like you or not, within like what, the first 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that's when this question usually gets asked. This is your time to shine. Make that good impression. And so I tell people to think about your answer to this to be like a commercial. Okay. And the reason I use a commercial instead of an elevator pitch is because there's a couple of things about a commercial that keep us from changing the channel. One, they're short and sweet. And two, they have a hook, right? There's something that keeps you from changing the channel. And so what I want my candidates to do when they answer this question to build that rapport very quickly is I want them to take something off their resume that's not readily apparent. And I'll give you an example here in just a minute. And I want them to tell a story about it. I want them to engage, think of it like their audience. And so, in the analogy I give later is that I want you to be dancing around in their head when they're interviewing other people. That's how
Mm.
strong this hook needs
Mm.
to be. Okay.
Yeah.
I want you thinking
Mhm.
about it. Do y'all remember the commercial Puppy Monkey Baby?
No.
That sounds very familiar.
It was a Super Bowl commercial. And it's
Yeah.
this weird creature, this puppy monkey baby that
Yes.
walks in. And I saw it like 25 years ago. And this thing still dances in my head. That's a hook. right?
Yeah.
And so for me, and the example I give to them, my hook would be in the tell me a little bit about yourself is, so as a recruiter, networking is very important to me. And I have my affiliations listed on my resume, right? So I would start with, as you can see, I'm a member of Success North Dallas, and also that I'm their chief of staff, and I'm a member of several other organizations. But what does that really tell you? It doesn't tell you a lot. So let me tell you what being chief of staff for Success North Dallas means. It means I'm the first face that people see at each event, and that I am the one that is making those connections and introducing the right people at the right time. I'm so good at this that people often refer to me as the networking ninja.
Networking
Awesome.
ninja, sticky.
Yeah. Nice.
I love it.
Sweet.
Casey, I wanted to save a little bit of time to make sure you can share with the audience as well how they can reach you, how they can contact you, or anything you're working on. So I want to give you that space right now, if you don't mind.
Awesome. I do not sit still. I'm sure y'all can tell. And my computer is slipping, guys. I'm sorry. I'm having to hold it. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Casey Hasten. You can also go to my personal website, caseyhasten.com. That's where you're going to learn about all the fun stuff I'm doing right now, my coaching, my media appearances, the podcast, but also coming in Q3, I am launching a new journal. It's a journal / planner that is going to be the be all end all of all journals ever, because it has everything you need in one place. So it's 6 different sections. It's got mindset, affirmations, efficiency, so your habit stacking, goal setting, productivity, and even finance.
Ooh.
Wow. That is a mega sort of sandwich of all the things you need to keep your personal and professional life super organized and together. Sounds awesome.
That's awesome.
And I've seen it, so it's awesome.
Casey, thank you so much for taking the time today. We had a really, really great conversation here around this world that I'm not a part of, but you make it, you kind of sold it to me. I'm like, maybe I should get into some recruiting. It's
a lot of fun.
Really, it sounds great. You make it sound great. Really, really appreciate the time today, Casey.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you to our listeners as well. As always, we really appreciate you tuning in. We do have new episodes every single week without fail. So please keep tuning in, subscribe, tell a friend. And as always, check out our book, Love as a Business Strategy, available everywhere. Chris, thank you for joining me today as well. Appreciate you being a co-host today. And with that, we'll be signing off. See you guys next week.